Hello everyone and welcome to another Checkpointless campaign recap. The rules are the same as every time on this. We remove all the checkpoints from the maps and try to finish them without any additional help. Just a single click for every single checkpoint to remove them and that's it. In the case of gate checkpoints, if you remove them it will not change too much, but for regular road checkpoints, removing them will just leave a hole in the track and that actually makes things a bit more complicated and interesting. Well, you could have seen that a moment ago. We only had one hole near the end because all the other checkpoints were the gate variants. I will be showing the top 3 on all of the maps. The drivers had about 1 month to hunt the maps, so the records should be mostly pretty optimized. Map 2 that we are watching right now actually has a pretty neat shortcut. This is what I love the most about these remixes. When the normal campaign tracks turn into some random stunt maps or some kind of high IQ puzzle where you have to search for a way to skip all the gaps in the roads. Now map number 3 has an easy way and a hard way, and unluckily for the hunters, the hard way is the fastest one. You have to just follow the normal route and find a way to somehow skip the big gap. There is not a lot of speed and you have a snow car, but people still found some ways to get to the other side. And after getting there you don't have to worry anymore as the rest just stays untouched. Well, I will also show you how it looked like for the rest of the podium. Pretty similar trick here as well, just a bit slower, and now also a short presentation of how the easy and slow way looks like. You just have to drive around on the scenery and join the road back near the end of the track. For a long time the fastest records were hunting this path, but when it was proven to be possible to stay on the map all the way, people just focused on that instead. Map number 4 is a rather simple one, but look at the podium. We actually have a tie to the millisecond between the first and second place, and that's pretty rare to see in this game, especially because it's not some kind of precision map where all of the records are close to each other. The runs are not similar at all, they just ended up finishing with the exact same time on their clocks. It's hard to give a good overview on the finish because the replays end early, but I still wanted to give you another perspective. Anyway, we are moving to the map number 5, and I think it's one of the more difficult ones in the campaign. The records here were still hunted, so it's not the kind of map which you finish once and don't touch anymore, but it's also not a trivial one where every attempt ends with a finish. You have 2 random tricks that you have to make in a row, so obviously you will restart a lot. We are approaching the second gap, which is the harder one to pass, and we also see a position swap between the podium cars. Now I also wanted to show you the original way how the map got validated. Instead of turning around at start, you just follow the dirt road and do the same kind of border bounce as on the second gap. That was much harder to nail properly, so it's cool that the other strategy was found, especially because it's also faster. Now we are moving to map 6, which will also have some cool strategies involved. Shortly after the start you can skip a big portion of the map by jumping to the sausage road and then keep enough speed, jump towards the snowy hills and bounce up all the way to the top, while trying to reach the plastic platforms as quickly as you can. The rest of your run depends on the speed that you manage to keep. In general there is not much more you have to do, just don't do any silly mistakes and you should grab the finish here in your hands. Map number 7 now. There is an interesting trick here where you slightly lift the front of the car up, and because of less grip on the snowy surface you don't lose your speed as quickly. Looks very random, so it was probably pretty annoying to hunt that. Anyway, we continue on. There is another hole that we have to avoid, but there is plenty of space next to it, so it barely impacts the path that's taken. But now we have a very impactful change in the map's route, with the bounce among the scenery and landing on the roofs above the very last section of the map. Now map number 8, which sadly is probably the most boring one, as removing the checkpoints does not change anything. I also included info about a world record from the regular map. Obviously records there will be much more optimized because why would you hunt the checkpointless version if you can do that on much more prestigious normal version? Still, the times here are pretty good. Also important to mention that this was done before the snow car update, so now they would probably get pushed much lower. Not sure if the records on map number 9 would be pushed much lower as well, because the world record here already looks pretty fast. Apart from the bobsleigh jump near the beginning of the map, the rest is not very complicated. Just do some ice slides like you would do on a normal version. Well, this is of course if you know how to drive ice properly. If you don't, then it might get complicated. But it's your fault that you chose to play this particular map. You could have picked map number 10 instead, which has no ice whatsoever. And in fact here you barely even drive on roads at all. Shortly after the first start drop, you get onto the grass and just start gathering speed. Some wiggle speed slides thingies are recommended for just that extra tiny little bit of speed. The more the better, because you have a big jump to make with the use of a very conveniently placed quarter pipe on the grass level. A stylish noseback on the landing for a faster finish time, and that's the end of that map. And now we start map 11 with instant action as we jump out of the road right away and skip the entire map by bouncing to the scenery pieces that lead to the last straight line of this map. Usually at this point you can already celebrate, as there is no way to fail now, unless you fail a grass wiggle and drop the gear or something. Anyway, now let's have a look at a different point of view, as you can also stay on top of the scenery and drop down a bit later. Pretty similar strategy in general. What will be the strategy on map 12? Let's find out. As of now it looks like we are just driving the map normally, but hopefully something more interesting is going to happen in a moment. Pretty standard drop into the water, some more dirt driving, and this is where the action is about to start, as we are jumping out of the truck and aiming straight for the finish area. You have to avoid all the obstacles and try to not crash into the finish blocks, but actually drive through one of them. And now we will be driving through map 13, which is probably my favorite one out of this campaign. And shortly after the map begins we already do some elegant tricks with a very smooth wall bounce. This is not everything, as now we have a freewheel block skip, which is also done very smoothly. There is no time to rest, as another trick is coming. Here you have to make some use of the new wall properties to get some additional airtime, to jump over the hole, while also maintaining speed for the quarter pipe jump that's coming in a second. That was an intense chain of difficult tricks, but now it's going to get a little more chill, as the second part of this map is more about precision. I hunted this map a bit myself and I thought I had a clean run, but it is like 5 seconds behind the ones you see here. So trust me, these times are crazy fast. Now it's time to move to map 14, and oh boy, this is an interesting one as well. The first gap is very simple one to skip, but the second one is going to be more troublesome, as you need that weird water pool bounce to get to the other side. I'm not sure how difficult or consistent this trick is, but I don't think many players actually used it for their records. The cars are approaching the dirt uphill, and there we will witness another trickster to bypass the gap in the platforms. Just look at how beautifully it turned out, keeping great speed and avoiding all of the scenery pieces in the way. I'm not surprised this record was not beaten, that was really clean. You could also tell that just by looking at the podium times, the gaps are pretty massive too. Here you have an alternative way to go around the second hole of the map. It was the strategy used earlier on during the hunt. The pool bounce trick was found later, so that's maybe why it was not used more. Map 15 is another one of the more difficult tracks. In fact, I think I have not even finished it myself. Mainly because I was just trying other random and harder strategies, but still I think it's difficult. The start is not a problem, but then we have to jump onto these spectator blocks to skip some of the holes later on in the map. Luckily the spectators are gone when rendering replays, else it might be too violent to show on the video. Anyway, you climb to the top of the block and then move on to adjacent scenery pieces. Go around the corner, get onto the roof that stretches over the entire map, and at this point you can pretty much drop down to any part of the track. But obviously we wanna drop as close to the finish block as possible. You can't actually drop down directly in the finish area, but it's not a problem, as the last section only has one hole that is very easy to avoid. Of course, also try to not crash into any of the trees that were planted there. It will hurt the tree, and we don't want to hurt anyone here. Trackmania is a rather pacifist type of game. Unless you are a top 1 leaderboard player that wants to stay anonymous, then some weird people might get really hostile towards you, but that's not the point of this video, so let's... Anyway, map 16, we have some great scenery usage here. Huge portion of the map is being skipped, and that way you get to the ending area of the track. You do the big jump and you can play something else, like for example map 17. This map is probably much more pleasant to play after this snowcar hitbox fix. The landings should not cause you random slowdowns anymore. At least I hope so, I didn't really test the changes too much. Without any checkpoints, this map will have a gigantic shortcut where at the big jump you can jump to the left between scenery pieces and land somewhere near the finish ring. The flight is very precise, but the landing area is also rather big, so it's not that hard in general. Okay, now map 18, we have the first and only stadium roof climb track in this Checkpointless campaign. It takes a while to climb there, so maybe I will tell you about some of my video plans. After I'm done with editing this video, I will probably start working on the 10th mapping competition video. It's been a while and I have not even picked my winners. I did not even announce what the prizes will be. Basically, I did not do anything because I had other stuff to do first. So that will become my priority now. I know people are waiting and I don't feel good about taking so much time on that. In the meantime, I'm also doing a compilation video with all of the elimination race steps. I will show all these steps in one video, also focusing on showing the fastest and slowest country of each step individually. The video is estimated to be around 3 hours long and I currently have about 1 hour 15 minutes done. I don't even know if anyone will watch like the entire video, but I still want to make it just to satisfy myself. Getting back to the map, here comes the roof jump and this is where the positions will swap as well. The entire climb is important, but it's also important to jump back in a way that will not cost you too much time. The last sausage part does not hide any surprises, so you can just safely go to the finish and take some rest. I am not taking any rest, however, as we are moving to map 19 now, which is a map I actually hunted a bit myself and ended up being in the second place. The most crucial part of the track is the flip over the hole right here, where all sorts of random things can happen. Even landing backwards is a viable strategy, but in general you wanna keep a lot of speed to jump over the freewheel block. With no freewheel you can do a small shortcut to reach the reactor boost early and then you should be able to follow the regular path for a while. You can see that all 3 podium cars are pretty close to each other, despite using completely different tricks on that one gap earlier. I'm actually a bit sad as my start clearly had a world record potential, but you can just never get everything perfectly in one run. The map ends with a huge shortcut and let's give some highlight to another very different strategy. Here you go a bit safer over the gap, but you can also maintain a pretty good speed and try to not skip the engine killer. With the extra speed it's also more beneficial to just do a wall hack instead of doing the shortcut. In the end it was about the same as the other 2 records. Very fun map in my opinion. Let's see if map 20 will also be fun, and to me personally it was not. It feels similar to the original map, except here the shortcuts are even more massive. You almost try to just go in a straight line from the start to the finish. It's very heavily dependent on the speed you can carry from the previous parts, and while driving next to all the obstacles it's not easy to also go fast. Here we have a new ginormous cut that skips like half of the map. The landing is a bit sketchy, but there are some ways to keep your car stable and reach the finish quick. Now on map 21, reaching the finish itself is going to be quite a challenge. The goal is to reach the reactor booster as soon as you possibly can and then just fly directly to the end on the other side of the track. You also wanna skip the transformation gate. Reactor flights with the stadium car are just much easier and more controllable. It's always very satisfying to watch a well-hunted reactor boost track, and this is no exception. Beautiful run. Surely one of the better looking records we have in this video. If you think this was satisfying, you might want to wait for this map because, spoilers, there will be some more reactor boost action here. Before that, however, we first have to get back onto the track, and for that we will use this spacious grassy area and some of the ramp-shaped scenery pieces scattered around. A lot of speed is necessary because we have to jump very high up and land on the plastic roofs above the usual driving area. Here comes the jump with the perfectly calculated amount of speed to not have any unnecessary airtime, and right away you wanna drop down onto the track and go towards the reactor boost section. Once you get the reactor boost you can pretty much reach any spot on the map, and there is no better landing spot than directly in the finish line. This surely takes a lot of practice to get to this level of precision. I would personally not touch the map at all if I saw that this is what you have to do to reach the end. Luckily this is not actually what you necessarily have to do, because there is a completely different path which can take you to the finish ring with a similar time, and it was actually driven to take this second place in the leaderboards. The start is going to be very similar. You also have to build up a lot of speed, and you will also go for one of the ramps placed on the grass level, but in a completely different spot, and you will also land in an entirely different section of the track. This path is also not easy to complete, especially if you also wanna drive fast, but still, it should be much more accessible than that huge reactor flight. Here you will also be able to drive the regular route of the map for a while without worrying about any pesky holes and gaps in the roads. Things will get a bit more tricky at this part as you can cut a significant portion of the track with some help from Reactor boost, but here I think it's less about having good car control, but more about just getting lucky with how your car is going to flip on the hills. And wait, map 23 started and it ends already? I've decided to show each round separately because of how short this map is, just a single reactor flight into direct finish. This track turned into an interesting LoL map, but for some contrast, the next one will take some more time to watch it. Map 24 still requires a lot of ice driving, so it is going to be a bit slow paced, but because of the lack of checkpoints we will still witness some interesting tricksters. You can see that the fastest time is currently on the last place, which is a rare sight, so you can already expect that something interesting is about to come. And there we go with a big shortcut, which is a bit weird to drive because of the angle and weird landing zone, but unusual tricks usually make the biggest differences between the records. There will be another interesting jump that you have to do to skip a gap right after the ice slide. It's not easy to get into correct position for the bounce and you also need some luck to get flipped properly, so this is the trick that will shape the final positions between the drivers. And just like that we finally get to the last track, so yes, all of the maps have been successfully finished with no checkpoints in sight whatsoever. Let me know in the comments which record was your favorite and also tell me if you enjoyed the commentary, as I'm still experimenting with how I want to present these types of videos. I would like to thank all the drivers for hunting the maps and special thanks to AR for validating all of them for me. Here you can see the final campaign standings, big GG to all these players, and this is the end. Thanks everyone for watching and a special thanks to my channel members. Goodbye, have a nice day.